Hello, welcome back everybody. It's time for another video for the Spectrum. It's been a long time. This is adding 5 games I loved on the Amiga to the Spectrum, and I just thought this would be something a little bit different. I think I've told you in the past, obviously, that eventually I moved on to the Commodore 64 from the Spectrum. Well, I kind of had them simultaneously. When I moved on to my next computer, it was the Amiga. So there are quite a lot of games that I played the Amiga versions of but didn't play the Spectrum version of. So I just thought it might be quite cool to add a few, and we'll see how they work. That being said, let's crack on with this list. This is 5 games I loved on the Amiga that I'm going to add to the Spectrum. Alright, so first up we have North and South, released in 1991 by Infogrames, which was described genre-wise as a strategy game / war. Maximum players 2 players, and the original price was £12.99 or £17.99 on disc. Obviously Amiga was one of the other platforms, but it was also released on Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, Commodore 64, MSX, NES and PC DOS, and more recently it's on the PlayStation. There's a version of it anyway, because I keep meaning to buy it on the PlayStation, but I'm not hearing great things about it, unfortunately. I think it's also available on the Switch now as well. A lot of platforms. Average magazine score for this one was 90.67%. Review awards was a Crash Smash, Sinclair User Silver, and Your Sinclair Mega Game. And apparently the +3 version of the game adds more variety in some levels and includes new AY sound effects. North and South on the Amiga, absolute classic. I mean, really did enjoy it. It was my first sort of taste of really like that, the kind of strategy game, you know, like you see something nowadays like Total War and stuff like that, those sort of games where they look very complicated, but it's almost like the map and you see the armies on the map and that sort of thing. That's the first time I ever saw it really in a game represented like that, and it was a fun game as well. Lots of humour in it too, and yeah, just a whole bunch of fun to play. So let's take a look at the review. This, I believe, is the Crash review. Yes, it is. I'm not going to take as much time as I usually do with these reviews because they just seem to take forever to get through, but we'll read it anyway. But we're not going to read the comments and stuff like that. Just you could want to read those yourself, it'll be on the screen for an extended period of time. So just to let you know, we're going to cut the reading down a little bit. Take part in your own American Civil War in this masterpiece of Spectrum programming from Infogrames, where comic strip heroes created by Lambeau and Calvin, I would imagine that's pronounced, Le Tourniquet Bleu, or the Blue Jackets, come to life. The objective of the game is simple: eliminate all the enemy armies across America to ensure victory for your side. You do this by moving your troops around the states, launching surprise attacks on your enemy's forts, hijacking trains across blood-stained fields. There are 4 main parts of the game, each packed with excellent animated graphics, lots of colour and real toe-tapping tunes. You start with a map of the USA. The armies are shown by soldiers representing good and bad on each state. The type of flag there shows who it belongs to. Running around the edge of the map is a railway line, and on the coast ships sail up and down. If you attack a fort, you go into an arcade sequence where the fort scrolls along and you have to dodge the guard dogs, ammo boxes and knives coming from the enemy to reach the flag at the far end. Roles are reversed, with you defending it if an enemy decides to have a go at you. Intercepting a train is done in a similar way to the fort. The train runs by and you have to climb up the side and run along the tops of the carriages, jump into gaps and make it to the driver. Watch out for those knives again though. Engaging in battle is a funny old game too. Foot soldiers and horse riders and cannon operators are all shown on a large field with bridges and rivers separating the 2 sides. First army to be totally destroyed by the other is the winner, and that state becomes the prize. North and South really shows up a lot of other games by being just so slick in presentation and graphics. There are animated sequences as an introduction and when you win and lose a game, as well as all the excellently drawn and animated arcade sequences. Play is a little puzzling at first, but you easily get the hang of it, and you can vary the difficulty. You do this by selecting options at the beginning of a bout. You can choose to have the ships on or off on important decisions as they bring reinforcements from Europe. You can have Indians on or off to save being attacked, and change the weather conditions which stop an army from moving. For those of you who don't like playing arcade sequences all the time, there's also an option to stop them. Battles are then decided for you by the computer. North and South is not to be missed. If more games were like this, there wouldn't be talk of the Spectrum dying. Okay, interesting. 3 cheers for all those involved. Hip hip hooray. Nick 95%. It's quite funny that, isn't it? Because we're sitting here in 2025 and I'm making a video about the Spectrum and it says it's dying back then. Obviously I know different incarnations and stuff, but it's quite interesting to see that, isn't it? And ratings wise, there's loads of different styles of gameplay, all well produced, make up a masterpiece. Presentation 95, graphics 93, sound 90, playability 91, addictivity 91%, overall 96%. So there you go, what a review that is. I love North and South, one of my favourite Amiga games for sure. When I played it, I absolutely fell in love with it. It was complicated at first, but like it says in the review, quite simple in the end to get the hang of once you've played it a little bit. Bit intimidating when you see all the things like building up on the screen, like, you know, the states fall into the enemy and stuff like that. You know, it's one of those games, a bit like I used to find out with Rocket Ranger when you saw the Nazis taking over the map and you were getting a bit paranoid about the fact you weren't doing it right and stuff. But definitely a fun game. I'm sure anyone who's played it will agree with that, and hopefully the ZX Spectrum version lives up to it. Certainly looks like it does from the Crash review anyway, so I'm looking forward to having a go at this one. So the next game we're going to look at is Batman the Movie, released in 1989 by Ocean Software. Arcade game action is the genre, released also on, of course, Amiga, Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, Commodore 64, MSX and NES. Average mag score 87.46. Annual awards: First Best Overall Game 1989 Crash Readers Awards, CMVG Hit, Crash Smash, The Games Machine Top Score from The Games Machine obviously, and the Your Sinclair Mega Game. I've actually mentioned this game briefly before. I think it was in the second 20 that I'm going to add to the Spectrum. Well, obviously some games are going to come up in multiple categories, and this is definitely one that was a classic for me on the Amiga. My Amiga, when I bought it, was the Batman pack, or when my dad got it for us, should I say. It was the Batman pack, and it had Batman obviously included, along with New Zealand Story, a flight simulator, and also Deluxe Paint as well. I remember it might have been Deluxe Paint 3 at that point. I can't remember exactly. I remember it had a picture of Tutankhamun on the cover though. That's what I vaguely remember about that one. Yes, I think the flight simulator was FA-18 Interceptor as well. Just said a flight simulator a minute ago, just realised I didn't quite do that justice. But yeah, all great games, and we also got TV Sports, Football and Fairy Tale with that too, so we got a lot of good games to start our little collection off. And yeah, nothing but great memories of playing Batman. Maybe it's not the most complicated game, but like I've already said on previous videos, we didn't get brilliant movie tie-ins back then, not the best anyway. They were never the best of games, and Batman was a good one, and I thoroughly enjoyed playing it. And you did kind of feel a bit like Batman, the way you were swinging around and throwing your batarangs around and stuff, and enemies shooting at you and throwing bombs at you, and you got to drive the Batmobile as well. So awesome game. Let's read the review. It's only a short review, this one. Again, I'm not going to read what Nick says in the middle there, the big comment, so you can read that in your own time. I'm just going to read the main review and we'll go over the ratings. Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight? Now's your chance. Batman the Movie is here. This is Ocean's third foray into the Batworld, and without doubt the best, with Gotham City hoodlums terrorised by a caped hero, the creation of the Joker, and a climax in Gotham City Cathedral, just like the film. The game opens with a police raid on a chemical plant burgled by a local hoodlum, Jack Napier. Batman chases Napier, negotiating 60 screens filled with hoods, police officers, acid drops and gas from leaky pipes, armed with a seemingly inexhaustible supply of batarangs to fend off attackers. A gun which fires a rope and a grapple has him swinging, and a swashbuckling confrontation with Napier and level end with the villain plunging into a vat of acid. I think they've got that slightly wrong there. Thus the Joker is spawned. On level 2, Batman rescues beautiful photographer Vicky Valve from the clutches of a vengeful Joker, and they make their escape in the Batmobile, zipping down the streets with Gotham police in hot pursuit. The immense speed of the car makes ordinary turns impossible, and only by shooting out a cable which snags a handy lamppost can the Batmobile be swung in the desired direction. Safety is found in the Batcave, and it's time for a bit of brain work. Batman has 1 minute to solve a riddle of how an apparently random poisoning campaign waged by the Joker can be thwarted, and on in his Batwing, our hero must save an unsuspecting crowd from the Joker's Smilex poison, about to be unleashed from overhead carnival balloons. The wingtips must cut the balloons' mooring ropes. Success crash lands poor old Batman into a climactic last 100 screen level in the cathedral. The Joker has taken refuge on the roof. Using his bat rope, the Caped Crusader must climb to the top of the tower, fighting off cops and the Joker's men to reach the villain and put pay to him. I'm a great Batman fan and not disappointed. It's not the best grammar in this review, of course. There's a few grammar errors. I'm a great Batman fan and not disappointed. Jack Nicholson's movie performance as a psychotic Joker is ably matched by the pixelated stand-in, and the Batman sprite is no slouch either. Go with a smile and get this extravaganza, probably better than the film. I like the film personally, but there you go. A brilliant and varied humdinger of a film tie-in, no joke. 91% for presentation, 91% graphics, 89% sound, 92% playability, 93% addictivity, and overall 93%. So there you go. Not much more you really need to say about that game. Absolutely awesome. I'm sure you've probably played a version of it if you're a fan of the movie, for definite. Even if you're a fan of just like platform games or action games, I'm sure you've played it. and definitely, if you haven't, really worth checking out. I remember when it came out in the day, it wasn't that expensive either, £9.99, bargain really. And wow, I'm looking at buying new games at the moment and I can't buy them because they're £65. It's like £9.99 for a classic game like this back then. I mean, we were spoiled, weren't we really? I suppose, inflation wise, that was probably a lot of money for us back in the day, but I wish games were £9.99 now, I really do. But we're not going to go on about that. I'd say for certain, if you love this game, add it, of course. If you've never played this game before, has to be on your Spectrum for sure. And I'm just hoping it plays half as well as the Amiga version does. The Amiga version's lovely as well, colourful. I know we're not going to get the colours in the Spectrum version, but let's see what the playability is like. I might actually go through and play some of these games on videos as well, just to see what they're like. But yeah, definitely worth adding. The next game we're talking about is Kickoff 2, released in 1990 by Anco Software Limited. Obviously, it's a football game, and it was only available on the 128K Spectrum. Also released, of course, on Amiga, Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, and Commodore 64 for £9.99 or £14.99 on disc. Now, this is a game that's going to struggle with its comparison to the Commodore Amiga. I mean, the Amiga version, so quick, so colourful, you wouldn't get colour clashes. Obviously, not so much going to happen on the ZX Spectrum. I think probably in the list of all these games, this was probably the one I had most trepidation about because, comparing it to the Amiga version. I mean, I couldn't imagine, for a start, Sensible World of Soccer has never come out on the Spectrum. I would imagine that this is going to struggle in a comparison to the Amiga version. What little I've played of it, yeah, I'd agree with that assessment. Colour clash is a bit of a problem on this one. If you only had a Spectrum back in the day and you were craving playing Kickoff 2, then it's still a pretty good version. So don't think I'm slagging it off for 1 second. It's just that it was so high quality on the Amiga and so like something that blew you away the first time you ever played it. Well, it did for me, maybe it didn't appeal to everybody, I don't know, but certainly for me, this first time I ever played it blew me away. And it came out a couple of years before Sensible Soccer, don't forget. So, it didn't really have that competition when it first came out. Probably now I prefer Sensible Soccer over Kickoff 2, but, back then it was always close for me. It was always close. Kickoff 2's always had a special place in my heart. And yeah, the Spectrum version is good though. So I don't want you to think I'm saying it's not. Anyway, I tell you, we'll have a look at the review anyway. This one is from Your Sinclair. I was going to put a Crash review on, but it was tiny and yeah, they didn't particularly rave about it. I wanted to show a positive review of this one as well. I think they gave it 55% on Crash, so they weren't enamoured with it. This one's slightly better. Let's have a read anyway. It's an interesting start to the review because he's talking about cricket at the start here, which is weird, but anyway, we'll read on. There aren't any decent cricket games on the Speccy. Sadly, this situation has not been improved by Anco's sequel to the world-dominating, government-toppling, knee-trembling Kickoff. Well, world-dominating, government-toppling, knee-trembling on the 16-bit machines at least. Cricket is a slow, peaceful game, mixing the gentle whack of leather on willow with the soothing sight of men in white pottering around in the green field. Anco have completely failed to incorporate any of these factors into Kickoff 2. Not surprising really, since the game's about football. I was beginning to wonder if you'd noticed, Ed. Yeah, I was beginning to wonder that actually. It's the first Ed comment that I've actually probably agreed with. Football is not a pretty game, and nor is Kickoff 2. It's not a pretty game, it can be a beautiful game. I don't agree with that. The choice of team colours is less than helpful. Yellow players on a green pitch introduce a fairly novel camouflage element to the game. Okay. Why try to outrun your opponent when you can hide from him? More confusing still, if you stand too close to an opponent, he changes to your colour. Perhaps Kickoff 2 is trying to be the first footy sim to incorporate an end-of-match shirt-swapping sequence. Then again, perhaps not. Apart from that, the graphics are something of an improvement on the original. No more of this players running under the touchline nonsense. Besides, as that lovable young pop star Gazza Gascoigne proves, football isn't about the looks. Oh god, that's a bit harsh on Gazza, isn't it? But actually, it's probably fair to be honest. It's about action, fast action, and Kickoff 2 has plenty of that. Although not entirely smooth, the game is fast and hectic. It's no surprise to find that the playability is as skillful as on the original. If only the same could be said for me. Alright, so Kickoff 2 is as playable as its predecessor, and though not perfect, the graphics are better. But are there any other differences? Well, of course there are. This is Kickoff 2, not Kickoff 1.5. The differences are in the options. Instead of simply setting a standard of play for both teams here, you can also influence weather conditions, the type of pitch, by the like I mean aftertouch, a phrase worthy of an ooh if ever I've heard one. Pervert. To be honest, most of the options seem to have a fairly minimal effect on the game. Waterlogged pitches make for slower, stickier play, whereas on the plastic pitches there's more bounce and less control. However, the difference is not that marked, and even whacking the wind speed up to 4 barely ruffled the referee's Paul Daniels Deluxe toupee. The real skill option is aftertouch, which allows you to control the ball after it's left your foot. This does not mean that you can kick the ball once you're in your own goal area and then guide it all the way back into your opponent's net. Oh dear me, no. Instead, you can revel in Gazza-esque crosses Thrill as the ball curls past the defence and lands at the foot of your centre forward. Gasp as you pull off the perfect banana shot. Scream as the ball executes a Thatcherite U-turn and ends up in the back of your own net. So there we have it, pot pickers, sorry football fans. Kickoff with knobs on. To be honest though, the knobs aren't really that special. It's a good footy game, but despite the improvements in the graphics, it's not outstandingly better than the original. If you didn't buy Kickoff, then Kickoff 2 is worth getting, unless of course you hate footy game. But if you did, then there's probably no point in getting the sequel. If however you're looking for a game with leather, willow and nice jumpers, then you're going to be sorely disappointed. Guy's slightly obsessed with cricket, isn't he? The Diagnosis, an above average footy game, but not much better than the original and certainly not as mega as the 16 bits. Life expectancy 70, graphics 62, addictiveness 82, instant appeal 83 and overall 80. So there you go, probably what we were expecting from Kickoff 2 really. It's a hard sell on any other machine, I would say. The Amiga's a definitive version and that's that. That's sometimes the case, isn't it, when you're putting games that you, like in this list for example, games that I love on the Amiga are probably going to be very hard to beat on, I hate to say lesser systems, but you know what I mean, less powerful, less graphically capable, you know, that sort of thing. I love my Speccy, you know that, so I'm not going to diss it. It's just the Amiga was obviously a step up, wasn't it? It was a 16-bit and you know, it was a move towards the future, so coming back to play games on it, they're probably not going to be as good. You're just looking for them to be playable, and from what I played of Kickoff 2, I enjoyed it. There's differences, obviously. I was about to say I don't see there's a lot of difference. There's obviously differences, but still a good game to play. And I think if, like I said before, if you only had the Spectrum version to play back in the day and you were desperate to play it, then I think you'd really enjoy it. It's just comparing it forwards to the Amiga version, yeah, it's probably not going to be as good, you know that. Next we have Stunt Car Racer, released in 1989 from MicroStyle, made by Jeff Crammond. An arcade described genre-wise as an arcade game, race and chase. Interesting. Maximum players 2. Released for £9.99, £14.99 on disc, and came out on a lot of systems by looks of it. Amiga, Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, BBC Micro, that says it's unofficial though, Commodore 64, Commodore Plus 4 and PC DOS. Average review rating was 87.67%. It got a Sinclair user best budget and your Sinclair mega game. We're going to be looking at the crash review, and I guess it must have just missed out on a crash smash because it got 87%. Must have been just short. Stunt Car Racer was a very graphically impressive game on the Amiga at the time, and I remember not seeing anything quite like it. Also, I remember kind of getting a bit of vertigo and a bit scared of this game because it was very much like a roller coaster. Like, you know, playing this game, it was almost like you were on a roller coaster. And yeah, I mean, at the time it was that effective that it did kind of make me start to get a bit of vertigo and a bit sort of like of that thrill of going over a roller coaster, especially when you have like a massive jump when you hit it at top speed and you just went flying. Obviously on a roller coaster you don't go flying through the air unless you're in, you know, on a track or something, but you know what I mean. It's like, it's that thrill, isn't it? That thrill of like the stomach kind of goes a little bit as you go over those big bumps and stuff. And yeah, I loved Stunt Car Racer. I remember it was a Christmas time, we were at my aunt's. My mum was just recovering from an operation, so we spent Christmas and New Year's at my aunt's, and they actually hired us a Commodore Amiga to play. We only had our one at my dad's, and we were going to be spending a few days there, so my cousin's husband worked in a computer shop and bought us home a Commodore Amiga to play in a bunch of games, and one of them was Stunt Car Racer. We'd never played it before, and yeah, we spent all of Christmas playing it. I remember we had that, and I remember we had Ghostbusters 2, and we played Ghostbusters 2 for about 5 minutes, and that was pretty boring. So then we ended up playing Stunt Car Racer for most of Christmas. So that's definitely my memories of playing it on the Amiga. Obviously, I've never played the Spectrum version. I've seen pictures of it, and graphically it looks very nice considering, you know, the, shall we say, limitations compared to the Commodore Amiga version for sure. It looks very good, so I'm actually really looking forward to having a good go at this one. Let's read the review then. Formula 1 motor racing was a popular sport back in the late 20th century, but people are clamouring for more excitement, and thus in the 21st century stunt car racing is introduced. And now the track is a large aerial structure, rather like an old-time roller coaster. Oh, there we go, that's the comparison I made. Not for those of faint heart. Choose single player or multiplayer option, practice one of 8 tracks, then start the racing season. The aim of this 3D game is simple: rise from the bottom of Division 4 to the top of Division 1. There are 2 tracks in each division: Humpback and Little Ramp in 4, Big Ramp and Stepping Stones in 3, Roller Coaster and High Jump in 2, and finally Drawbridge and Ski Jump in 1. Practice is advised, but when you feel confident enough to tackle a race, your car is winched up to the starting line and the race is on. Oh, I always remember that part when you're about to start a race and the car gets winched onto the track. That's so cool. That's definitely a big memory, that is. You are presented with a driver's eye view of the course, so the track along with the huge V8 engine that powers your vehicle is visible through the windscreen. There are 11 other racers, all as keen as you to win the title of top racer, and like you, they will stop at nothing to win. Your car is a speedy little devil capable of over 300 turbocharged miles per hour. Don't think you can race around without risk. Watch the top of the screen. If you continue to abuse the car, large cracks will appear. This is your damage meter, and if you prang the car too much, it will be termed a wreck. Win or lose, I enjoyed playing Stunt Car Racer greatly. A hair-raising specky game. The graphics are very sparse, with the front of the car and the track the only features, but at over 300 big ones, you probably won't have time to see much of a background. One slight niggle is that when you prang the car, it takes so damn long for the winch to get you back on the track. It does do that, you're right. That said though, Stunt Car is a great way to get the old adrenaline pumping. 89%. A stomach churning ride, fun, playable, and great original idea. Presentation 85%, graphics 85%, sound 74%, playability 86%, and addictivity 85%, and overall 87%. So no doubt Stunt Car Racer is a great game, and it looks like it's also a great game on the Spectrum. I think they've done amazing with what I've seen of the graphics on this one. It's a fairly simple game, let's face it. You know, there's not too many tracks, but it's a very original idea for a game for sure. Me, I'm not really one for racing games as such. They're not my favourite games in the world, but I love this one because I think it's different. You know, it's got something different about it. Yes, it's a racing game at heart, but there's also the stunt elements. You're going over the jumps and everything. So definitely a brilliant idea for a game without a doubt. Love the Amiga version to death, and I'm hoping very much that I'm going to enjoy the Speccy version. Let me know in the comments if you've played the Speccy version. I'm sure there's plenty of you out there that have. And let me know if you played both. I'd be quite interested to see what your comparisons are too. And the final game on this list is Rainbow Islands, or Rainbow Islands, the story of Bubble Bobble 2, if you want to give it its full title. Released in 1990 by Ocean Software Limited. Bob Wakelin on the artwork, as always. You can always recognise Bob Wakelin. Arcade game platform is the genre. Also released on Amiga, Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, Commodore 64, NES, and Sega Master System. £9.99 or £14.99 on disc. So there's quite a similarity with all the prices here, isn't it? That most of them have been that, which is strange. But obviously we'd settled into a period of time, I guess, where they'd had fixed pricing for a lot of stuff. Average magazine score for this one is 94.44. First best in sound, Crash Readers Awards. Second best game overall, Crash Readers Awards. Second best graphics, Crash Readers Awards. It unsurprisingly received a Crash Smash twice, so I'm guessing that's for the budget label as well. Sinclair User Classic, Sinclair User Best Budget, Your Sinclair Mega Game twice also, so I'm assuming again once for full price and once for budget. So it's crazy, isn't it? Got a lot of awards. I was a latecomer to Rainbow Islands, I gotta say. I mean, I didn't own it until I bought it on the Hit Squad label on the Amiga, so that shows you. Obviously I bought budget version, but I think it's the type of game it is really. I wasn't a massive platform game fan, but a lot of my friends were, and they talked about Rainbow Islands till the cows came home, and eventually I wanted to see what it was all about, and I bought it on Hit Squad, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was brilliant. Obviously my trepidations with playing this one on the Speccy would be that it's a very colourful game on the Amiga. Fortunately the Speccy version has its colourful moments as well. It's nowhere near as colourful as the Amiga version, but I have played the Spectrum version. I did a comparison video of Rainbow Islands versions. I'll try and remember to put a link. I always say I'll do that, but I'll probably forget to do it at some point. But there is a video out there on my channel where I do comparison video for Rainbow Islands with several versions of the game. I think I did vote the Amiga version the best, so there's a little bit of a heads up, but the Speccy version was great though. I'm pretty sure I had a lot of nice things to say about it. I can't remember because it was about 3 or 4 years ago I probably recorded that video, so but go check it out and you can see if I'm lying or not basically. But just know that if I didn't say the things I'm saying, I got an old brain and it was a while ago, so you know, forgive me. Anyway, we're going to read some of the Crash review here. The prequel to Rainbow Islands is an all-time favourite, Bubble Bobble. Now, after a long wait, the sequel is here. After defeating despicable Baron von Blubber, I love that name, and returning themselves to human form, Dynamic Bub and Bob decide to get away from the hustle and bustle of everyday life and go to the Rainbow Islands. But life is not happy and carefree for long, is it ever? Because he's back. Cue spooky organ music. Baron von Blubber is out for revenge. He starts by kidnapping the inhabitants of the island. Of course, Bub and Bob aren't going to stand for that. They once again go to war with the fat slimy one. In Bubble Bobble you used bubbles to knock the baddies for 6. Now you travel across the 7 islands, spitting rainbows at attackers. You start on Insect Island and your task is simple. Travel from the bottom of the screen to the top. On the way up you're attacked by all manner of Bubba's minions. Flies, ladybirds, crows and beetles. Apart from knocking them out with your rainbows, bonus points can be yours for picking up a variety of fruit, flowers, gems, etc. along the way. Extra goodies such as double and triple rainbows, extra lives and extra speed can also be found, but ours is not to tell you how. And a word of warning, take too long in climbing from A to B and a little incentive will be added to hurry you along. After 4 levels you face the island's fatty. They got a thing, they're quite fattest in this review, aren't they? Vanquish him and move on to the next island to carry on the good work. I really can't drag myself away from this game to write the review. Rainbow Islands is one of, if not the most, playable platform games I've seen recently. All credit to Graft Gold. Okay, character sprite is monochromatic, but he doesn't half shift. The backgrounds are the best part of the game though. Nicely detailed, coloured backdrops abound, with surprisingly little colour clash. Sound is also very, very impressive, with a bouncy tune playing throughout. A brilliant sequel to a classic game, 95%. Classic game that's inspired a rainbow brilliant sequel to savour and thrill to. Presentation 89%, graphics 90%, sound 87%, playability 92%, addictivity 92%, and overall 94%. Great review, great ratings. All of these games have got good reviews. I mean, I guess Kickoff 2 is the hardest sell out of all 5 of them, and that's the one that's got the lowest score, it turns out. But considering I'm not a platform game fan, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, really. You know, because I can't say I don't love platform games. There's a lot out there I do play. I mean, I've played all the Mario ones to death, but it's like I'm not going to reach for a platform game before anything else, you know. It's lower down on my list, say, like to sport games, as you all know, and also a good like action adventure game. At the moment I'm playing Alan Wake 2 in my spare time, and I'm absolutely loving it, despite the fact I'm grabbing my pants every 5 minutes. But you know, apart from that, I'm loving it. So, you know, those sort of games probably hit me harder than a platform game, but I still have time for them. It's funny actually, because I grew up in the arcades and scoring points and stuff was all you really did in a game back then, or for most of them. Yeah, I don't really like that many games where you just like, you know, you're jumping around collecting things and scoring points. To me, I think games moved on from that era personally, but that's just an opinion, obviously. You know? Don't come for me on that. You know, it's just, they're not my favourite games, but I'll still play them because, you know, I love all games, you know, pretty much. This one is a really good one, and it's definitely a great game. I had a lot of fun playing Rainbow Islands back then, and you know, for the videos that I've done subsequently. So yeah, I'm sure most of you have played it, particularly if you're platform game fans. I'm sure you love it. So as always, let me know your opinions in the comments, and also don't forget to let me know like some of your games that you would have added to a list like this. Might even do a sequel list yet, so we'll see. Okay, so that was 5 games that I loved on the Amiga that I'll be adding to the Spectrum. Those games were North and South, Batman the Movie, Kickoff 2, Stunt Car Racer, and Rainbow Islands. Most of these games were really good on the Spectrum. I was quite surprised actually. I mean, maybe not surprised about some of them because they're quality games, but you know, I thought after playing them on the Amiga that maybe I was going to be disappointed playing them on the Spectrum. Not the case at all. It just goes to show what a fantastic computer the Spectrum was, and still is, quite honestly. They do the games justice when they put them on the Spectrum, they really do. Obviously, if you're looking for a graphical improvement, you play them on the Amiga, quite honestly. Most of these games I've played to death on the Amiga, so it's quite nice to see them running on a Spectrum and to get to play them on there and experience them, and it's really cool. And I always think, you know, what it must have been like back in the day if you couldn't afford an Amiga, which was certainly the case for me for a little while. You know, it's nice to know that you're not getting a massively inferior product, you know, on the Spectrum. So I think that's really cool. And yeah, it's nice to see that they do such a good job. There aren't very many like, well, there are a few lazy conversions, if you like. Some of the ones that came after, so maybe a game released on the Amiga first and the Spectrum version was a bit of an afterthought that came later. There could have been a few stinkers back in the day, but I don't think there's any stinkers amongst these, quite honestly. I really enjoyed playing a lot of them. Kickoff 2 was probably the hardest one, to be fair, because Kickoff 2 is so fast and colourful on the Amiga, so it's lacking a little bit, say, on the Spectrum, but everything else was really cool. And I think if I'd only had a Spectrum back in the day, I'd have enjoyed playing all of them. So there you have it. Okay everybody, thank you so much for watching. As always, in the comments please do talk about these games if you want, or talk about other games that you loved on other systems. Doesn't have to be the Amiga, it can be anything, you know. Let me know if like you've got a few games on those systems that you've never actually played on the Spectrum, and maybe you've added them by now and started playing them. That would be quite cool to hear. And also, if you've got any more Amiga games as well, let me know those too. Okay, thank you so much again everybody, take care, and I'll see you soon for the next video. Bye for now.